Hey, Terra Nova, happy Mother's Day. Let's stand and sing together.
Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder? Who leaves us breathless in awe and wonder? The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who brings our chaos back into order? Who makes the orphan a son and daughter? The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. Yeah, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Yeah, all that you've done for me.
Hey, good morning, Terra Nova, and happy Mother's Day. Can't believe it. You know, I read a couple days ago that Mother's Day is the lowest crime day of the year. Which made me think, like, what do those moms do in the rest of the year when they're not being celebrated, right? Committing all those crimes. Hey, so glad that we're here together, and we're gonna sing, we're gonna celebrate, we're gonna stir ourselves up this morning. And I was thinking about this great story in the Old Testament where Moses, you've seen the movie, Moses is leading Israel to the land that God promised them, and they come to the River Jordan, and they realize, guess what? That thing that God promised us, we're gonna have to fight for it. It's not going to come so easy. And so Moses says this in Deuteronomy chapter 31. We're going to throw it on the screen here. He says to them, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be terrified because of them." He's talking about the enemy there. "For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you or forsake you." He then says, "The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged." I think it's interesting. He says almost the same thing twice. Like, you probably didn't hear it the first time. So let me say it again. God is with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will never give up on you. He goes before you. That means even before that fight, God is already there fighting on our behalf. So we're going to sing this song together. It's a song that reminds us that God is always with us, no matter what we're facing. I want to invite you to clap along, sing along this morning. Here we go. My heart remembers that you are here with me in the middle of the storm, when everything gets scattered. Oh, my heart will not be shattered, 'cause you are here with me. Whenever I call on your name, whenever I call on your name, your answer always is the same. There's truth that comes and sets me free. You are here. You're here with me in the middle of the battle. This song will be my war cry, so my heart cannot deny that you are here with me in the middle of the wilderness, surrounded by loneliness, where my soul cannot find rest, as you are here with me. Whenever I call out your name, your answer always is the same. There's truth that comes, it sets me free. You are here, here with me. Everybody singing out whenever I call out your name. And whenever I call out your name, your answer always is the same. This truth that comes and sets me free. You are here with me. Whenever I call out your name, your answer always is the same. There's truth that comes and it sets me free. Yeah. You are here with me. Whenever I call out your name, your answer always is the same. There's truth that comes, it sets me free. You are here with me. And thank you so much that you never leave us, God. You never forsake us. You never give up on us, God. We're so grateful for that. Let's sing this together. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, still you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, come on, sing it out. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it, till you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Let's take a moment and just pray and thank God for His reckless love. God, we just are so in awe of the love, God, that you find us and you chase us and you pour out over us. And God, we invite you here this morning just to, God, continue to show your love to us and to each other. And God, the things that we want to grow and learn in today, we are just so in awe, God, that you would come and chase us down. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, happy Mother's Day. Woo-hoo! So great that we're all here at Terra Nova. Man, we're going to have a really exciting day today. And before you sit down, though, I've got a question for you. And the question, it's a pretty simple question. It's this. What kind of packer are you? You know, like when you're going on a trip, right?
Yeah. Do you put it in cubes?
Or like just wad it up and like pre-wrinkle it and just, stuff it in a corner of the suitcase?
Do you roll your T-shirts and stick them in?
Yeah. Or are you a heavy packer? Or a light packer,
a light packer,
right?
Yeah.
Or anything. Oh, are you a packer that packs like weeks in advance?
Weeks in advance, or just the night before.
Okay, so you've already got that queued up. You already know how to answer the question. So what I'd love to have you do is turn to the person next to you, find out their name and the answer they would give to the packing question.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack.
Well, again, just want to thank you guys so much for being here on a glorious Mother's Day weekend. Man, it's great to have the moms here. Hey, why don't we go ahead and give these ladies some honor and just give them a round of applause for all the moms here today. Thank you for being here. And also, I wanted to say, too, if you're our guest and you're here at Terra Nova and you're new, we just want to say thank you so much for coming here. It just means a lot for us to have you come on out and give us a try, and we hope that your experience is really good with us.
Yeah. And it's great that you're here on Mother's Day. And it's interesting, mothers have one thing very much in common. There's lots of transitions that happen in motherhood, right? And our next series, right, is called Pack Your Bags that we're starting today. And it's all about kind of figuring out how do we navigate life's transitions and the changes that are coming. And, it's not just mothers, right? All of us go through a lot of different transitions in life. And so I'm excited just to see what tools we're going to get through this series about packing your bags. Because I know some people. This last weekend was graduation, big graduation weekend for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What are some other transitions?
So yeah, I mean, graduation is for some people like new job. You know
New
the
job.
new job feel.
All right, marriage.
Yeah, marriage.
Weddings
yeah.
coming up.
Right. Okay.
And we've got what else we got?
When people have one baby
or two.
or three babies.
Or four?
Yeah, just keep it going, keep it rolling.
we gotta stop there.
Okay.
Sometimes their transitions are like medical, a diagnosis or surgery.
Yeah, which is tough. Or sometimes it's really kind of fun ones like getting a dog. Some people do that.
Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes it's just, is moving too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Moving in.
Things that you see coming and things you don't see
So
coming.
some things we can prepare for, or at least try to prepare for. Other things we don't even know how to prepare for because we don't know they're coming. And so it kind of makes me wonder.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, it's like, can you even really prepare, right?
Yeah.
Especially during the times where you feel like you don't yet not know what you don't know.
Right.
And then how it is that you can keep taking this coming season from just being this like instant replay of the last season.
Yeah.
Those are a lot of questions
Yeah.
that we're believing that this new series
Yeah.
are going to give us some answers for.
Yeah,
so it's going to be really exciting.
Yeah. So before we jump into the series, when you came in today, you should have gotten a program. And in the program at the back, we have a Connect card. So we love everyone every week to fill out this card or sign online that you're here. And it gives us a chance just to connect. And sometimes all you're going to write is your name and just let us know that you're here. But other times it might be a prayer request, or since we're talking about life transitions, maybe there's a transition that you're going through that, or you are anticipate coming up. Just write down the transition that is going on in your life as well. And it's interesting too, because we've got a lot of things that are going on here at Terra Nova, and you can go ahead and look at the program. But we've got Terra Nova tours coming up in a couple weeks. We've got baptisms, and you guys might have seen this life group brochure. This is our first weekend to sign up for summer life groups. So take a look at the things that are going on, and you might look over and might figure out what you want to do today or sometime this week and sign up, because we feel like in that way a lot of times is where we get connected at Terra Nova.
Yeah, so Dana, I'm really fired up for life group signups coming up, so hopefully everybody does that. But also equally fired up for what's going to be happening here at Terra Nova next weekend. So we've got Kids Feeding Kids next weekend. And so, follow up Mother's Day weekend, the Kids Feeding Kids weekend. It's like, action-packed. And if you've been around these last several weekends, that you know that we've been getting ready for Kids Feeding Kids, where we are fixing to pack 75,000 meals
That's
to
a lot
go
of meals.
to Zambia in Africa, to this orphanage.
That takes
we
a lot of
partner
people.
with. Oh, it takes a ton of people, and so we all need to be there, right? And so we've been talking a little bit about, kind of the different steps or phases to Kids Feeding Kids. I mean, the first is for all of us just to show up in the parking lot, right? And we get to choose which time to do that, either Friday night or Saturday morning, or I guess we could do both.
Yep.
But hey, we're all going to show up because it's all hands on deck, guys. We need everybody involved in
And
this.
it costs a lot of
especially
money,
the kids.
too, to feed.
Yeah, so that's the second phase, and it deals with just gathering the resources to be able to pay for it, because that's a lot of meals.
How are we doing so far?
Well, great question. We're at about 67% funded, so there's still lots more room for people to be generous and give and buy boxes and just kind of go on and on with that. So we're getting close, and it's just so great to be in a generous
But we really
community.
need people to pack them.
Well, yeah, we do, and so that's this third element that I just want everybody just to really begin thinking about, and that's who we can invite this weekend, because it's such a great invitational event. It's real easy; anybody can do it.
Your neighbors.
Yeah, so you can think about inviting groups, right?
Boy
Not just
Scouts,
one person. Boy
Girl
Scouts.
Scouts.
We've seen Girl Scouts. We've
Soccer
seen
team.
that. We've seen those guys.
Water
Little
polo
league
team.
teams. What's that?
Water polo team.
People you play pickleball with.
People who play pickleball
Yeah,
with.
you got to do that. Yeah, and so you can think about the different groups you have, and you can invite them. And then we've seen, it works out really good, because it's like, you put like 10 people to a table?
Yeah.
And so you could like get a whole table. That would be really powerful for you to do that. So we got just a few days remaining before Friday night it all kicks off, but that's enough time for you to get those invites out for all of us too. And we just think that in many cases, when we invite people at Terra Nova, sometimes they might be a little gun shy about, I don't know if I can go to church on a week on a church service. But then when you tell them about what we're doing about really helping needy kids, and it's going to be in our parking lot, we find that people will go,
excited.
I'll do that. Yeah. I'll show up for that. And so we're just really trusting that God's just going to just give us just an outpouring of people, and we're just going to have a blast together this weekend at Kids Feeding Kids.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming today, and we're glad you're here for our new series, Pack Your Bags.
Well, hey, happy Mother's Day. How you guys doing? Good to see you. Good to see you. My name is John, and like Lyle and Dana just said, we're starting this brand new series, Pack Your Bags. Let me ask you, any Seinfeld fans out there? Jerry Seinfeld, comedian Jerry Seinfeld, Dating Ourselves, big show on TV, late 80s, early 90s. So that's the group that just raised their hands. Bigger than Friends at the time. That's maybe a little fun fact. But comedian Jerry Seinfeld, he used to do this bit about how we're always thinking about what's next, that whatever's going on in our lives, we're never really content just to be there. We're always thinking about what's next, like gotta go, what's happening next. It's like we get all dressed up to go out, had to go out, and then as soon as we're out, we're immediately thinking about how we gotta go, we gotta get back, like we need to park near the exit so we can get out before all these people. You know, let's not stay the whole time maybe. And it's weird because we spent all this money and drove all that way and got all dressed up, and all we can think about is how we need to get home and get up tomorrow and go to work, like gotta go. And it really is true. It's really true. I think that wherever we are in life, and really whenever we are in life, whatever season of life that we find ourselves, we're always thinking about what's next. We're always thinking about the next season, the next change, the next thing that's coming up. And so I just thought on Mother's Day weekend, as we're heading into the summer, and lots of changes and plans and graduations and kids coming home from school and kids going away to school and all of that coming up, that this would be a perfect time to actually talk about it. Pack Your Bags is a series about how to prepare to get to wherever it is you got to go to from wherever it is you currently are that you just got to from where you recently were. The short version is simply this: how to prepare for what's next. How to prepare for what's next. And we all have a what's next. We all have something coming up, another season of life that's in the future. And some of those changes and seasons we know about, some of them we don't necessarily know about, whether it's the next few months or this fall or next year or the next few years, whether that's a new school or a graduation or a new relationship or a wedding, maybe some new in-laws, some new relatives, a baby, another baby, and another baby is a whole different level of change, because one, you have no babies and you have one, that's big. But if you have like 3 babies and then you have 4, that's another level of change, right? And then there's like a breakup or a new, or a lost job, and then a new job, or maybe a new town, a new move, a new environment, a new coming up, a loss of a loved one, an empty nest situation, or a boomerang situation, or retirement. And for some of us, retirement might be one of those next seasons, and it might not be for a while. It might be a few years out, but that's another season coming up. And again, there's always a what's next. There's always a what's next. Sometimes we know about it, but for all of us, there's a what's next or two that we actually don't really know about just yet, but there's always another season. And in fact, this is really true, that in many cases, the change that we think we can see isn't actually going to be the change that we think it's going to be. And frequently, we know that once we get there, wherever there is, it's going to be different. But often what we think is going to be different isn't as different as we thought it was going to be. And then there are some other things that are really different that we didn't count on being so different. It's called the law of unintended consequences. And that could be a whole conversation in and of itself. But all of that raises a question: are there things that we can do to prepare for what's next? Are there things that we can actually do to prepare for what's next? Because when you think about it, what's next might be something you don't actually fully understand or know about, or you're looking forward to. Maybe you're dreading it. Maybe you're a little anxious. All change is stressful. But since we've never experienced it, can we actually prepare for it? And that's a great question, isn't it? And the answer, of course, is come back next week for part 2. No, I'm just kidding. The answer is yes, absolutely. There are things that we can do to prepare for whatever is next, and that's exactly what these next few weeks are going to be all about. Now, as we talk about this, there are three big ideas about changes, about seasons in life, about new seasons and transitions that you have to know that are really foundational to this entire series, because without these three big ideas, that like letting these ideas get into you and form part of your assumptions, this perspective, you will be caught off guard. These things surprise people all of the time, and you will be unprepared for what's next. 3 preparing for what's next principles, if you will. And the first one is this. The first one is there is no necessary correlation between knowing what's next and being prepared for what's next. That knowing what's next does not mean you are prepared or ready for what's next. In fact, I'll give you an example. Every weekend, all over Orange County, really all over our country, and frankly, all over the world, couples get all dressed up. They spend thousands, often tens and tens of thousands of dollars, get all of their special people around them, stand in front of a guy like me, and make promises and vows to one another. Till death do us part, they say, I promise, I vow, I do. And every weekend, couples make promises to each other that they are not able to keep. And it's not like they mean well. It's not like they're lying. They're just not prepared to keep the promises that they're making. And all of us who are even just a few years on the other side of I do know that just because you said I do doesn't mean you actually can. That being prepared and being willing or thinking you know what's next, they're not the same thing. And we tend to think that because we know what's next, I know, that we're actually prepared for what's next. But knowing what's next or thinking you know what's next or know all about what's next does not mean that we're prepared for what's next. And as you look at what's next, and you've got your hopes, and you've got dreams, you've got good intentions or expectations, maybe some fears or some anxieties or some hopes and some plans, that more important than knowing what's next, more important than your hopes and dreams and good intentions, and even more important than your plans for what's next, is actually being prepared for what's next. And that's why this series is so important. That's the first big idea. The second big idea is this, that along with everything else you pack for whatever is next, you pack you. You always pack yourself. This is so true that wherever you go, there you are, right? And this is so important for preparing for whatever it is that's next, because even when we know better, even when we know this, we all have a tendency to fall into what I call the when-then myth. The when-then myth says, hey, when things are different, I'll be different. In that new situation, whenever that comes up, I'll be ready for it. I'll be different. I'll be there. And the when-then myth is so tempting. It's so tempting because it's so tempting to think that things are the way they are because things are the way they are. Not because of me, not because I'm the way I am. It's because things are the way they are. And so when things are different, then everything will be different. I'll be different. When the situation gets better, I'll be better. Like when we get married, I'll change. I'll step up. I will. When I have more money, I will be more generous. By the way, that is actually never true. In fact, the only correlation between having more money and generosity is inverted, that the more money you have, the less you give. The only correlation between generosity is how generous you are now. But it's the when-then myth. In 12-step circles, we used to call this idea pulling a geographic, like all I need is a new location. A new location will make everything better. Like once I get out of this house, I just need to get out of the house. I need to get to school. Once I get married, once I get out of this marriage, once we have kids, once the kids are out of the house, once they're all grown up, once I get out of this town, I just need to get out of this town. We just need to get out of Southern California. If we could just get out of Southern California, once I get out of this environment and find myself or reinvent myself, myself, then I'll be better or I'll be different. We just need to know this and like let this get inside of us. Changes in circumstances do not result in changes of character. Changes in circumstances do not result in changes of character because once you get there, you'll still be you. You'll still be you, the same morals, the same decision-making compass, the same thinking, the same strengths and weaknesses and proclivities and instincts and subconscious appetites and unfinished business. Changes in circumstances do not result in changes of character. You know what results in changes of character? Changes in character. Changes in character result in changes of character, but it's a myth. The myth says, like, when this happens, then I'll be different, but wherever you go, there you are. And that is a huge principle, and that leads to a third principle that is so important in preparing for what's next. And the third one is this: your future is inextricably linked with your present, which then in turn is actually linked directly to your past. Your future and your present and your past are all linked, and that's why the unfinished business from your past keeps showing up in your present, and the unfinished present business in your present will show up in your future. Now, this idea here is the essence behind one of the biggest overarching themes in the Hebrew Scriptures that then just comes up again and again in the documents of the early Christians known as the New Testament. It's the concept of wisdom. The theme of wisdom. And a wise person, a person with wisdom, is a person that understands this, that understands that all of life is connected. They've put things together, properly or correctly in their mind, that their past is connected to the present, which is going to be connected to the future. They understand this idea of cause and effect, the relationship between the things that I have done and where I am now, and the things I'm doing now, and where I'll actually be and eventually be in the future. And there are a collection of wise sayings. There's this collection of wisdom that's rather famous in the Hebrew Scriptures. It's known as the book of Proverbs, and many of you have heard of that before. One of my favorite proverbs, or these wise sayings of all, is Proverbs 14:8. It says this: the wisdom of the prudent is to give thought to their, what is that? To their ways. To their ways, to give thought to their ways. In other words, the prudent person or the wise person, the super smart person understands life is connected. Life is connected. My future is inextricably connected to my past and my present. They understand this idea of trajectory. This idea of trajectory that because of my ways, what I am doing, what I am choosing, I am heading in that direction. So that means I'm probably going to end up in that location, but I keep telling myself I'm going to end up in that location, so I need to change my ways. I need to change my direction. And so prudent people are giving thought to their ways because they know the best predictor of their future is their ways, their paths, their patterns and behavior and choices, their tendencies. But the proverb goes on to say, but the folly of fools is just deception. In other words, the prudent person is always reflecting on their ways in order to prepare for what's next, to see ahead, but the fool doesn't do that. They actually lie to themselves. Fools lie to themselves, and they say to themselves, well, regardless of the way that this has turned out for me in the past, this next time it's going to be better because I'm going to be in a new town. Everything will be better. Or regardless of the way this has turned out for a lot of other people, that's not going to happen to me. I know, Mom, but that's not going to happen to me. That's not going to happen because I am smart. I am savvy. I will be able to outwit the outcomes. You just wait and see. And foolish people deceive themselves to think, I believe that I can behave myself in this direction in my life, and I am going to end up with that life over there. And the prudent person says, I don't think so. I think it's really all about your ways. I think it's all about your ways, not your wishes. And that's why the best way to be prepared for what's next, in order for me to be prepared for what's next, I need to learn what needs to be learned from what's now and from what's been. In order to prepare for what's next, I need to learn everything that needs to be learned from what's now and from what's been. And if I don't do that, I will unwittingly smuggle all my unfinished business and all my unlearned lessons, all of my issues and my character defects into what's next. And when I unpack my bags in my new location, it will all be in there. Often, by the way, magnified by the fact that it's a new situation. So today I want to take a look at something to get at this that's written by a really famous guy. He was famous in his own day. His name is James. James had an even more famous brother. Anybody want to guess who James's more famous brother was? Jesus, yeah. James was the brother of, that Jesus. That was his brother. And James writes a letter in the late 50s or early 60s AD during a time of incredible crisis and conflict. The region that he's living in, Jerusalem and the surrounding region, are headed towards a civil war. That civil war would break out a few years later after James wrote this letter, a few years later in the mid-60s against Rome. And the legions of Rome would come in, completely burn the city, destroy it, tear down every building. And in fact, James himself was killed right before that war broke out. And James was he was assassinated actually. He was a little like the Martin Luther King Jr. of his day, this champion of justice and nonviolence and trying to bring parties to a more peaceful resolution. And this letter that he writes is so packed with passion and with wisdom for our lives, as well as for the lives of the people that he's writing to. And he begins this letter, I always have to say this, because this I just find this so fascinating. He begins the letter like this: James, that's him, James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus, his brother, the Messiah. And whenever I read that line, I always think, and I always have to say, what would it take for you to come to believe that your brother is actually the Lord and Messiah, and for you to go around calling yourself a servant of God and him? Like, what would have to happen? And I love my brother. The answer is there is nothing that can happen. There is nothing that can happen. In fact, from what we know of historical records, James was actually not a follower of Jesus during Jesus' lifetime, before his crucifixion. He wasn't even a fan of Jesus. And then from historical records outside of what we call the Bible, from historical records, we know that James, the brother Jesus, becomes an outspoken, like Jesus, passionate leader. In fact, he becomes the leader of the mothership Jesus community in Jerusalem and the surrounding region. He is like the pastor and leader of the epicenter of the movement. What happened to James? Now, historical record tells us that James saw his brother after his brother died. Now, you may not believe that's possible. You may not believe that happened to him, but I think you would admit that if that happened to you, that might change your opinion of your brother. It would have to be something of that magnitude. To me, it's one of the most convincing historical proofs of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, the actual resurrection. Anyway, so that's how he starts. And then he says this. This is crazy. Consider it pure joy. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, because we're family. Whenever you face trials of many kinds, whenever you face, or that can be translated fall into, or find yourself just encompassed by, or you look up and you are surrounded by adversity or trials or things that test you and try you and test your mettle. And as he writes this, he is not talking about something hypothetical. His community and he himself are in it at the time. Now, the situation that you're in, that you're wanting to leave, you're wanting to get out of in order to get to what's next, it may or may not fall into a category that you would call adversity or a trial that may or may not fit, which actually in my mind makes these words even more powerful. That whatever what's now is for you, whether it's been great or it's been difficult, however eager you are to close that chapter and to get on with what's next, before you leave, James would say, before you leave, hold on, before you push the eject button, before you just escape, before you move on to whatever is next, if you want to be prepared for what's next, I want you to consider something else. I want to challenge you to consider choosing an opportunistic frame on your current season of life. I want to challenge you to consider having this opportunistic frame through which you see your current situation, even if it's a really, really difficult one that you can't wait to escape. Now, in saying choose joy, James is not suggesting that we don't feel pain or hurt or loss or grief or disappointment over difficult things. He's saying something different. He's saying feel the pain and feel the loss, but take a different stance towards it. Take a different frame in which you see it as not only something that's hard and a loss, but also as an opportunity for something that's actually invaluable. And here's why he says it. He says, because you know, and we do know. Here's what's funny. We know this. We know this is true. We know that the testing of our faith produces something. Now, James is using language here that alludes to a very common metaphor in his day. It's the metaphor of gold being refined by fire. Now, you probably know how the processes work. Where a process works, where gold ore is taken out of the ground, it's impure, it's mixed with rock and other minerals and such. And so they heat it up to 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot. And in all of that heat, everything begins to melt away. And the dross, as it's called, or all of those impurities begin to float to the surface where they can be scraped off by the refiner so it can be purified. In other words, the heat brings out what's already inside of it. It's not introducing anything new. All of that stuff was already in there. It's just bringing it to the surface. And do you know why the refiner applies all that heat to that gold ore? So he or she can remove the impurities and produce something that's so much stronger and more beautiful and more valuable. And James says, here's why I want you to consider it joy. Here's why I want you to consider having an opportunistic frame that testing actually produces something in you. It produces perseverance. It produces perseverance. All of that pressure and all of that adversity and all of the things you're having to struggle through in your current season, all of the heat has the ability to produce something beautiful in you. Perseverance and grit and resilience, the strength of character that stands up against difficult things and adversity and trying times with courage and optimism, that doesn't cave, that doesn't give up. It produces perseverance. Jonathan Haidt is a social psychologist at NYU Stern School of Business and a best-selling author, really brilliant guy. And he says that he wrote this book called Happiness Hypothesis, and there's a chapter in there on adversity. And he says there's one line of thinking when it comes to adversity that says adversity can produce growth. He says that's well proven. No one really questions or doubts that. Adversity can produce growth. But then he says there's another line of thinking, and he calls it the adversity hypothesis. And he says, according to the adversity hypothesis, people must endure adversity in order to grow. That people must endure adversity to grow, and the highest levels of growth and development are actually only open to those who have faced and overcome great adversity. One line of thinking says adversity can produce growth. There's another line of thinking that says growth requires it. That character requires it, and the highest levels of growth and development are actually only open to those who have faced and overcome great adversity. And then he admits that's a little disturbing. He says in this chapter on adversity, he says, that's a little disturbing because what that means is if we create societies where everyone's safe, if we create societies that remove adversity, that no one takes great risks and endures great loss, then no one will ever become the best versions of themselves. As parents, if we create childhoods for our kids where there is no risk and no loss, if we plow the road ahead of them so that they never face anything difficult, our children will never become the best versions of themselves. He says that's a little bit disturbing, and it is. Now, here's something we all know. We all know that you can experience adversity and not experience growth. You can experience adversity and have no character growth. You can be no better at all for it. In fact, you can be worse off for it. There's a choice that's required, that you lean into and you allow your character to grow. And that's where James goes next. He says, so let that happen. Let perseverance finish its work. In the early 300s, as the Jesus movement was just sweeping the ancient Mediterranean world, east and west and north and south, there was a smaller kind of sub-movement of people who began to follow Jesus, but they began to pull away from city life and from busy life into the wilderness, into the desert to like strip everything else away, to remove all of the distractions in their lives so they can focus on their spiritual health and their depth, right? And this was actually the beginning of something you've probably heard of called monasteries. This is how it began. And one of the very first people to do this was an incredibly respected man named Abba Anthony, also known as Anthony the Great, who's considered to be the father of all monks. Well, there's an old story about Anthony, Abba Anthony, where someone asked him, what must one do to really please God? Which is a great question. What must one do to really please God? And the first two pieces of advice he gave were not surprising at all. He said, always be aware of God's presence. That's pretty good. Always do what God says, and that's pretty good. But the third piece of advice actually caught the asker off guard. And here's the third thing he said. Wherever you find yourself, do not easily leave. Wherever you find yourself, do not easily leave. And the idea is the community is hard, and family is hard, and authentic friendship is hard, and faithfulness or loyalty over the long haul is hard, and circumstances can be hard, and work can be hard, and life can be hard, and leaving can seem so easy. What's next can seem so much more attractive in the long run, but leaving easily has a tendency to produce people who are not growing, who are not learning, who are not developing a strength of character. And James says, do not easily leave. Do not easily leave. Let perseverance finish. Let it finish its work so that you can be, check this out, mature. Anybody want that? Complete. And how's this? Not lacking anything, so that you can become whole, a whole human being, the best possible version of yourself. In other words, he's saying, I want to challenge you to have this opportunistic frame for your current situation, the one that you're in right now that you can't wait to get out of, to see it as an opportunity to learn and be made complete, to actually see this current situation as your training grounds for whatever comes next, to learn what you need to learn, to grow how you need to grow, to recognize what you need to recognize, and deal with what you need to deal with, so that when you get to what's next, you will be the kind of person who is prepared for whatever what's next really is. And if you don't do that, here's what you need to know. What's next will not fix you or make you whole. What's next will not fix you or make you whole. A new relationship will not fix you. Marriage will not fix you. Single people bring their single people problems into marriage thinking marriage will make them better. Marriage does not fix single people problems. It is a magnifier for the problems that you have, right? It will not fix you. A baby will not fix you or what's wrong with your marriage. Another baby will not fix you. A new job will not fix you. A new town will not fix you. More money will actually, surprise, not fix you. In fact, having more money, generally speaking, doesn't even fix money problems. How crazy is that? And James says, do not easily leave. Do not easily leave. Let perseverance finish its work. Make sure you learn what you need to learn in this next season so that you can be whole when you get to what's next. Now, there's a fly in the ointment at this point because we often lack the perspective that we need to actually see what we need to learn. To see what we need to learn, to understand how we are actually contributing to certain patterns that seem to repeat themselves in our lives, to know what our roles in certain things are so that we can grow. We lack, in a word, we lack this thing called wisdom. We lack wisdom. And so this is where he goes next. He says, and if you lack that, and we all do, if you lack wisdom, especially in a situation where I can't wait to get out of and I just can't wait to escape, especially when something difficult in my life seems to just keep happening to me, and I don't know why this keeps happening. I don't know. I think all guys must be this way because every guy I date, every job I land, everything seems to just repeat, especially if you're in a situation like that. James says, here's what you can do. Here's what you can actually do when you don't know what to do about what keeps happening to you to let perseverance finish its work. Ask God. Ask God, and He will give it. He will give you wisdom. And you know what wisdom is in this context? Wisdom is the perspective to see these current circumstances of your life in this broader perspective, in this broader context. The perspective to see the current circumstances in a broader context of life and reality in and of itself, and also your own story and where you've been and where you are and where you're going. Wisdom is all about this bigger perspective. And parents, you get this. Moms, like, you totally understand this, because I don't know, some of you moms, your kids are a little bit older now. Some of your kids aren't quite this age yet, but a lot of you know what this feels like your kids, maybe your preteen or your junior high, they come to you and they're just so distraught. I mean, they are just so distraught because something happened in their friend group, or there's something you're not gonna let them wear, and it is the end of the world. I mean, it is the worst day ever. And you listen to him, you try to be all empathetic and compassionate, like, oh, I know, it's so hard, and it's not fair, and I know, I'm so sorry. And then you walk away from that thinking, I wish I had preteen problems in my life. I would trade the problems I'm facing in my life for a handful of preteen problems any day. Why is that? Well, because they have a 5 or a 10 or a 15-year-old perspective, a worldview on their lives, and to them, this is their entire world, because it's all they can see. And you have this 35 or 45 or 50-year-old perspective or worldview, and then there's God. Like, how big is that perspective? What is it that he can actually see? And just imagine, like, right in the middle of the meltdown and the tears and the snot and your wiping of the face, just imagine right in the middle of that, your little preteener was to say to you, Mom, can you just help me see as you see? Could you please just help me see as you see? It's not gonna happen. Forget about it. It's never gonna happen. But how about this? Imagine if you began to say, God, will you help me see as you see? There are things I can't see. There are things that keep repeating themselves. There are things I don't understand. Would you give me the wisdom to see as you see? I need a bigger perspective. I need clarity of insight. I need to see myself as you see me, the reality of me, away from all of the self-defense and the mechanisms that I put out. I need to see my circumstances with broader perspective. I need to see my contribution to what is happening in my world and what's happening in the rhythms and repeated patterns of my life. I can't see everything I need to see. God, will you help me see like you see? And I love how James ends this. Here's how he ends this. You ask God, who gives generously to all. And then I want to say these next 3 words out loud. Will you say this with me? Let's say these 3 highlighted words together all at once. 1, 2, 3. Without finding fault. I want to hear you say that again. 1, 2, 3. Without finding fault. Without finding fault. One of the things I have found over the years in life is that fault finding is generally incompatible with learning. That fault finding is generally incompatible with learning. That people who are really concerned about whose fault it was and whose fault it wasn't and where the blame goes, and especially avoiding the fault or avoiding the blame, they are generally not very good at learning what they need to learn and seeing what they need to see and owning what they need to own and growing and getting better. And conversely, people who love learning generally don't really care that much about the blame or the fault. I don't really care so much. Maybe it's your fault. It's probably not my fault. It might be both of our faults. What are we going to do? How do we learn from this? How do we make this better? And the more I'm concerned with whose fault it is and finding fault and placing blame in what was or was not my fault, the more resistant I will be to seeing what I need to see and potentially seeing the contribution that I make to things that keep happening in my life. And then James says something that might come as a total surprise to you. In fact, it might actually be the opposite of how you view God. James says, God, your heavenly Father, is not at all concerned with that. He's actually not at all concerned with finding fault in you or placing blame in you. You might be finding fault in yourself. You might be beating yourself up, or you might be avoiding fault, and it's not my fault, and it's not my fault. But God actually doesn't look at you or me that way. He wants to help us see what we can see and learn what we need to learn in order to be mature in order to be whole, in order to be complete, the best possible versions of ourselves. And he knows we need wisdom, and he knows we need to grow. He knows who we are and what we're made of. He is not surprised by what came out of your mouth this morning or how you dealt with that situation last night. He's not surprised by any of it. But notice how James says God approaches us generously. He approaches us like this open-handed, generous posture, not critical of our faults, but generous to give us the wisdom we need so we can see what we need to see. Now, one of the challenges with that, one of the challenges with being prepared for what's next, especially when I don't exactly know what's next will look like, when we can't see what we can't see and we don't know what we don't know. One of the challenges is we don't actually know how exactly to prepare for something we don't know how it will be. And that's why next week we're going to talk about how to know what you don't know. How to know, because there is a way to know what you don't know, and by the way, it is a critical aspect of decision making and navigating, of choosing the right what's next and being prepared for whatever what's next is. But we all have some what's next. We all have some. There's some we know about, there's some we don't know about, and they're going to surprise us. And James says, before you got to go, before you start packing up, before you get ready to leave, before you close this chapter and open the next chapter, do not easily leave. Do not easily leave. Let perseverance finish its work. See your current situation as an opportunity to learn what you need to learn and grow how you need to grow to be made whole. See your current situation as a training grounds for whatever comes next. In order to be prepared for what's next, I must learn what needs to be learned from what's now and what's been. And if I don't, what's next will not fix me. It will not fix what's wrong. It will not make me whole. And if I don't, I will unwittingly smuggle my unfinished business and my unlearned lessons with me. And when I unpack my bags in my new location, they will all still be there. So I want to end with a series of questions to ask yourself before you leave, metaphorically and literally. So here are the three questions. The first question is this. Here's a question to ask yourself. Hey, have I learned everything I need to learn in this season? Like, I'm fed up with this job and I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to get out. I need a new job. I need to move on. I need something new. Wait a minute. Have I learned everything that I need to learn in this season before I step into the next season, or have I been avoiding that? Have I been avoiding learning? Have I been avoiding seeing certain things that I need to see? Has this just been a repeat of my last three jobs, and my next job will be the same because I haven't learned what I need to learn? Have I learned what I need to learn? Here's the next question. Have I resolved everything I need to resolve in this season so that I do not carry it with me into the next season? Have I owned everything I needed to own? Yeah, there's some things that kind of went bad and there's some stuff that went sideways. Have I recognized my contributions? Have I resolved? Have I mended everything that needs to be mended? Have I had the conversations that I need to have? Or is there still unfinished business? And I would rather just shut the book on that chapter and open up a whole new one. But have I resolved everything I need to resolve? And here's the last question. Have I done everything I need to do? Or can do, because sometimes I've reached a point where I'm not going to be able to do things that I probably needed to do, but at least have I done everything I can do so that I am leaving without regrets or resentments, either on my part or, by the way, on the part of the people I'm leaving. Like, I'm not leaving them with a stack of regrets and resentments because of things I left undone. Have I fulfilled obligations and expectations that were had when I stepped into this? Have I brought everything I really should have brought in that season? Or have I used the circumstance, have I used things and other people as an excuse for me not to really show up? If I were honest, for me not bringing my whole self, have I done what I really needed to do, contribute what I needed to contribute before I move on to what's next? And as I'm packing my bags for whatever it is that's next, see, I don't want to unpack my unlearned lessons, and my unfinished business and my unresolved issues and my unfulfilled obligations. I don't want those things to repeat themselves in the next season of my life. I want to pack the lessons I've learned and the strong character that I've grown and the beyond minimum requirement contributions that I have made and the people that I have been a blessing to and the wisdom I have gained. And I want to pack all that up and I want to bring it with me into the next season of life, because that's what I want to repeat when I get to whatever is coming next. And speaking of what's next, we'll pick it up right there next week in part 2 of our series, How to Know What You Do Not Yet Know. Let me close this in prayer. Heavenly Father, I just want to thank you for wisdom from millennia in the past that speaks so clearly and relevantly to our lives today. Turns out, I guess, not much has changed when it comes to human nature. And so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for speaking clearly to me and maybe to others in this room. And we just always pray that wherever we're at in our journeys and our spiritual journeys and our life journeys, that you would always, always please give us the ears to hear what we needed to hear, the eyes to see ourselves and not dodge away from things that we needed to connect with. Would you please give us the grace without finding fault, the grace to receive things you want to say to us, the power from within by your goodness, by your generosity, and your wisdom to know what to do with it. And I pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, John. And thank you for joining us on this great Mother's Day weekend. So glad that we could be together. Just a couple of reminders as we make our way today. We talked about a Connect card that's in the program. If you haven't taken a moment to fill that out, go ahead and do it right now before we exit. Let us know how we can be praying for you, or if you've got any updated contact info, any of that stuff. And there's something else that can go on there. We've got an upcoming Terra Nova Tours in 2 weeks. Now, this is a great opportunity to find out more about what Terra Nova is, where we came from, where we're headed, what's important to us, and lunch is provided. Really, I should have started with that. We have a thing, there's gonna be lunch and childcare. I mean, the content is almost, it's not irrelevant. I'm joking. But if you would like to get more information, if you haven't been to a tour, I suggest that you just go ahead and write Tour Me on there. We'll get some information to you and get you plugged in. If you'd like to attend, it's in 2 weeks. It's on a Sunday after our third service. So would love to have you be a part of that. As always, there's an opportunity to give either in the envelope that is in your program, and you can drop it in the basket on your way out, or online. And there's lots of various ways if you go to our website to find out about how you can do so online. So before we gather again next weekend, KFK will be upon us. This is the week to make your plans, clear your schedule, make sure you're here, invite some friends, stop by the table on the way out today and find out all the ways to get involved, and as many as you can, do so. It will be another year before we do this again, and you will not have wanted to miss this opportunity to make such a huge impact in the lives of kids. So do that, and we'll see you next week for part 2 of Pack Your Bags. Have a great weekend.